Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Terri Show, where we talk about issues that truly impact your health, your family, and the future of our communities. Today's conversation takes us straight to the heart of something that touches every single one of us every single day: the food we eat, the farmers who grow it, and the policies that shape how it gets from their fields to our tables. This episode is recorded right in the nation's capital at the offices of America First Policy Institute, where my guest, Tate Bennet, serves as Director of Rural Policy. And let me tell you, Tate is not just an expert in agricultural policy. She is a passionate advocate for America's farmers, rural communities, and the vital link between food, health, and national security. Our food is our security. This is a very important episode. We are diving into the story behind the Great American Farmers Market, a first-of-its-kind event held right on the nation's mall, the National Mall, during National Farmers Market Week. It is not just about fresh produce and handmade goods. It's about putting America's farmers in the spotlight, telling their stories, and showing the critical role they play in our nation's well-being. We'll talk about how food security is national security, the challenges family farms face, and why preserving them for the next generation matters more than ever. But that's just the beginning. We'll also explore how agriculture intersects with public health, from improving nutrition and preventing chronic disease to tackling food waste and ensuring more Americans have access to fresh, whole foods. You'll hear how recent policy changes are already making a difference, like states being able to limit sugary processed foods purchased with SNAP benefits and companies voluntarily removing harmful additives from products our kids eat every single day. We'll dig into MAHA, the administration's national health initiative, and how farmers have a seat at the table in making America healthier. And of course, we'll break down the One Big Beautiful Bill, historic legislation that delivers tax relief for farmers, strengthens rural economies, and modernizes the farm safety net and invests in rural healthcare access, including mental health resources. If you've ever wondered what's happening in D.C., at least these days, when it comes to food, farming, and health, beyond the noise of social media and political spin, this is the conversation you need to hear. Whether you're a consumer, a health professional, a parent, a part of the farming community, the information in today's episode will give you a clearer picture of the challenges, the progress, and the opportunities ahead. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, maybe something local and fresh, and enjoy this conversation. By the end of this episode, I think you'll have a whole new appreciation for the people who put food on your table and for the work that's happening right now to make our food system stronger, healthier, and more secure for generations to come. Tate, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to be here at AFPI's offices here in D.C. I've just recently gotten to be in Tate World. I've gotten pulled into Tate World, and I really love it because you're doing so much here as the Director of Rural Policy at AFPI. And this is a very busy week with the Great American Farmers Market. So fun. So super excited about that. And by the time this airs, that'll already have been gone. But I do still want you to talk a little bit about, why we did it. Yeah. Let's start there. And then I want to hear a little bit about your story, why ag, sure, and just what you've been doing, what you've been up to. I know you were at the EPA for a while, but I kind of want to just build that because I love what is happening here in D.C. this week because I've talked about it. If it's been once, it's been 1,000 times about how important it is that for just food to our health, and just bringing awareness, and especially it helps the health of our citizens in our nation, but it also helps the farmers. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about how we got here this week with the Great American Farmers Market.
It's not one or the other. Well, first and foremost, thank you for letting us just suck you in. I think. Terri, we sat down like 2 weeks ago, and what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Hey, do you want to come up in 2 weeks? We have a bunch of folks coming in town. You should interview them as well. So it's been a whirlwind. So the Great American Farmers Market, Secretary Rollins is a visionary. No surprise there, especially she's been sort of one of the thought leaders, founders of the modern conservative movement through founding AFPI back in 2021. And so no surprise that she would sort of design a farmers market on the mall during National Farmers Market Week, and usually an unsung hero of a holiday, right? We always participate at our local farmers markets, and it's fun to see sort of a platform nationally.
Is it the first farmers market that's been on the hill
They made from time to time, one organized, I think, to my knowledge, a cabinet level of this magnitude. They do have a farmer's market at USDA with some frequency, but I think this is the Super Bowl of all national farmers markets. I'm from Kentucky. I'll get into that in a little bit. But my commissioner rather, it's different in every state, of Agriculture is coming up to highlight and showcase some of their Kentucky proud products. I know there's some other states doing that too. A lot to see out there.
That's cool. That's awesome. And why? What was the impetus behind it?
Yeah. Secretary Rollins puts farmers first. What better way to showcase their products from across the country by giving them the national stage, right?
100%. 100%. And then even just, I was speaking about this with another guest, and just even how, national security is tied to our food, and how we've really got to bring awareness back to that.
That is right. Another thing I'll say, and I haven't had a direct conversation. Obviously, the Secretary has left AFPI directly, but I know that, the Farmers First mantra, preserving family farms, the bulk of our farms nationally are family owned and operated. What does the next generation of farming look like? That's another component of this too. In addition to the food security is national security. We want to be able to consume our own bounty here that's grown here in the United States. So there's a lot of different policy priorities at play that are kind of culminating in the Great American Farmers Market.
That's awesome. And, I just really didn't know, I guess, because I've never thought about it. It's not my world. It's my world in that I'm teaching, and of course I shop fresh and local. Obviously, it is my world in that way. But just getting involved in being on that Teams call, a couple of weeks ago with all of the farmers, and just understanding what are some of the challenges they're facing, and listening to Secretary Rollins on that call and just jumping on it. I mean, what an amazing work. And just, I learned so much about just things you don't even think about that they're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And you lived in this world. You came from farming. So talk a little bit about that.
Yes, ma'am. No, happy to share my background. Not to backtrack, but on the we had a rural influencers call that we were so happy for you to be a part of. You are one. Wow. And back to why the farmers market, the national one, farmers need help telling their stories. Yeah. And that call that you joined are a bunch of individuals who are using their platforms for good to tell the story of agriculture, to tell the story of where their food comes from. Aside from a couple trade associations here and there in Washington, D.C., which I don't know if people want to listen to them or not.
Yeah.
That's been their voice for so long. So really seeing those farmers and ranchers engaged in the social media platform and helping give them even further voice in Washington, D.C. has been particularly meaningful. And the Great American Farmers Market will obviously lend itself to telling stories as well.
Well, and just bringing awareness, I think, too, because I think we take it for granted that we can just walk into a grocery store and things are there.
It's there. And it all looks alike, right?
And until we bring awareness of the issues that our farmers are facing, the issues that, we're just facing in food being, our national security, people really need to understand this, because it's not going to hit anybody until they walk into that grocery store and half the produce is available.
That's right. And I've learned, the American public, I'm a mom, my mom friends, government is never really the answer, right? There isn't really the strongest of trust, right? Even though we have, and I will give the administration credit, some of the strongest, standards possible for the foods that we consume. And I know Secretary Kenney's making that stronger. But that's sort of what consumers hear. They hear that piece. But sometimes it gets lost, okay, well, how are we who's producing the food that gets to that level? Where is it coming from? And gosh, there's a whole story, a whole culture. Our moral fabric is grounded in the folks producing food. And they're so busy working. I come from a farming family. They don't rest. They don't take vacation. There's no way they're going to tell their story as well as they could. And so it's been so helpful working with you to help shine light on those stories.
Well, I want you to shine some light here today on some of those stories. Even just, any stories you want to share, I would love to hear them for sure.
For sure. A little bit about, well, I'll start with my stories. Why am I here? How did I get here? So I am originally from Shelbyville, Kentucky, right outside of Louisville. I grew up on a horse farm, so no surprise to those who follow kind of the Kentucky signature industries. My parents are horse trainers, and my mom's a riding instructor. And I grew up showing that was my sport. Competitively. We still do it. I teach my son, but we rolled our own hay. We were very ingrained in the local Farm Bureau community. We have my grandparents, in fact, were dairy and row croppers, and they grew tobacco as well, which is very labor intensive. It's a small community of farmers who know each other. And so still very much, even though my parents took a slightly different path, very much ingrained in the ag community. Yep. So, grew up showing horses. I knew I wanted to explore something other than being a horse trainer. I came up to DC to intern for my hometown congressman, who's still there. He's wonderful at the time. And I, knew all the farmers and ranchers coming to DC once a year, not on social media, to dust their suits off, to go up there and advocate with Farm Bureau and talk about their issues. And candidly, those were the ones I understood the most. And they resonated with me, and it was a little bit of taste of home. Yeah, it hit home. Much faster pace of a city. And I thought, at the time, my eventual fiance, now husband, he's really big into tax policy. He's still doing tax policy, was big into healthcare. That's what everyone wants to do at a young age. You think it's like a big ticket to ride. And I was like, I want to be I want to be a woman in agriculture. It's what I want to do. And so I got to work on those issues in the House. I got to work in those issues in the Senate. And eventually I had the opportunity to work as the agriculture advisor to then administrators, Pruitt and Wheeler at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which, I think the farming community has been disproportionately impacted by EPA. Without a voice. Some folks call it the Environmental Punishment Agency. While I had a lot of friends at USDA, it was particularly meaningful to go to EPA because that tends to be a very heavy-handed regulatory body to help.
And were you able to just be a voice for that group? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So they do a lot of the chemical safety. They do a lot of the water regulation, air. There's been a lot of this and that out there about methane emissions. And so kind of calming down some of the misunderstood science and misunderstood information there. And it really gave farmers and ranchers a peace of mind. I think we took Administrator Wheeler to a good number, at least 2 state fairs, including the Iowa State Fair, the Kentucky State Fair. I'm a little biased. And just to show EPA can work hand in glove with the farmers. So to me, that's meaningful. We signed, when I was there, our first ever MOU with the Future Farmers of America, National FFA. They had never been in the building, much less signed an MOU. So it was really meaningful to make a difference. It's such sort of an agency known to misfire here.
And is that stuff sticking?
It is. I've had calls. I hope he watches this. My successor in this administration is called to kind of kick the tires on some old ideas we had. And really, they're continuing on issue I had worked on, food waste reduction. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah,
the other day, we need to talk about that.
Yes.
It's so important. There are equities in EPA because that's less methane emissions that go into landfills. Yeah. Obviously, USDA has some equities because those are markets.
So just off the cuff, I just want to talk about this because, at the state and local level, I remember when I was working on my doctorate, there was a group of nurse practitioners that were trying to get a grassroots initiative around all of the waste, just produce and food that's thrown out in dumpsters in the back of grocery stores that is perfectly good and edible.
Oh, 100%.
And they really created an amazing program in getting all of that produce on like an ice cream truck style and going and driving through lower socioeconomic neighborhoods and giving the produce away to families. I mean, how come we're not doing more of that?
Totally. Well, hopefully more to come with the administration. It's a priority for the America First Policy Institute Farmers First agenda. We have a whole pillar on it.
Awesome.
Sarah Fry with Fry Farms, who's amazing. You need to get to know. This is a big issue for her as a lot of times produce is susceptible to waste, shelf life. And she's one of the largest melon and pumpkin producers in the United States. And so we have a lot of policy on this. A couple things going on. those represent missed marketing opportunities for farmers. Fortunately, you're seeing more platforms come online wanting sort of the discarded, normally ugly produce. So total new marketing.
It's a whole
opportunity
brand
for our farmers. I know. So making it cool. It's on a larger commercially viable scale. And then, additionally, trying to provide some clarity. There are liability assurances. So for some of the larger grocers, and I get it, like then there's science behind some of it, marketing standards and all that, but helping kind of bust through just sheer demand for what meets the cosmetic eye. But then also helping grocers industry understand they actually have liability protections. I think a lot of times you might get some risk-averse, attorneys, but risk-averse attorneys, like, what if something happens or someone gets sick, even if you donate in good faith? There's actually a whole federal liability shield. In some states, like Oklahoma, others have gone the extra mile to do state-level additional protections as well for donations made.
Absolutely.
In good faith, we've encouraged
pantries.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am. All of these things.
And there's so much more that can be done to kind of incentivize this behavior. So we'd love to get you in that fold as well.
Girl, you're talking about language.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's move on a little bit to, the MAHA agenda and how ag can play a role. Let's talk about MAHA anyway. And then what's going on? What are you working with as regards to bringing ag into this whole conversation of MAHA?
Absolutely. I think the administration, we'd love to continue to be a partner, but they've done a really good job, especially in the recent months, bringing ag sort of in the tent to understand where they can play a role. And
because these all have been operating in their silos, kind of.
Totally. Yeah. I think, let me unpack the timeline. Secretaries Kennedy and Rollins with the White House rolled out in May a initial MAHA report, was sort of a status quo, state of play on our nation's health, children, chronic disease. Here's what we see, the playing field as we see it. And since then, there's been a lot of stakeholder interest, particularly on the ag front, wanting to come to the table. And the White House has been so accessible. Gosh, I don't want to misspeak for them or speak for them, but dozens of roundtables. A lot of the officials have gone out into the field to meet with farmers and see where their food comes from. So really, it's been an effort to unify. And I think as far as what role can they play, consuming whole, clean fruits and vegetables is a huge part of it. We have policy on that in the Farmers First agenda. And I just think it's a huge opportunity for producers to kind of elbow in and say, hey, we are the solution, helping make America healthy again.
Absolutely.
A lot of this is nutrition. You've taught me a lot, Terri, about preventative medicine. And gosh, I think farmers need a front seat.
Well, it starts even just with pregnancy in the womb and, all the way up. And we're seeing now more and more diseases, starting in pregnancy, babies born already predisposed to diabetes and other chronic diseases because of this. And it's an education thing. And there's so much with that. And I love even what's happened recently with WIC and in some aspects of the SNAP program. We can talk a little bit about that and incentivizing and what programs are out there incentivizing people to use some of these resources to purchase more whole foods instead of non-food.
Yes, exactly. I think some of those changes too have just been remarkable. The administration in the first 6 months lightning speed.
Unbelievable.
I've never thought this would be possible, but at least 6 SNAP waiver approvals. So allowing states to be the laboratories of democracy and come forward to USDA with a plan to restrict certain sugary, caffeinated beverages and foods, candies, depending on the state, from their SNAP eligibility in their state. And USDA has worked with them quickly to approve those. I know there's some other states in the pipeline. I know West Virginia submitted, a handful of others, Texas. So more to come there.
And what people need to understand, and this is so important at the state level because, the healthcare is a burden to society. And the more we have people with these chronic diseases that are fully preventable, starting with food, it's good for everybody. It's good for them especially, but it's good for taxpayers. It's good for the ag industry. It's good all the way around.
And these are taxpayer-funded dollars.
Exactly.
And as you know, there have been a lot of burdens on our healthcare system as a result of unhealthy choices and being a pattern in the past.
All of them, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. I mean, they're all connected.
That's right. So kudos. I think Sarah Sanders kind of drew a line in the sand last December and really sort of empowered other governors, implored them rather to take similar lead.
Yeah.
Mike Braun, governor of Indiana, he's been amazing. He led on a lot of these issues. He was kind of Maha before Maha
was
around. When he was in the Senate, I had followed him there. And so obviously that was an early state as well to submit.
Go ahead.
Additionally, another piece of that as well, we're seeing industry sort of come forward without getting the regulatory stick first.
Yeah.
Volunteer.
Well, there's been such negative press about it. Like, why does cereal look like this in Europe and this in the States?
Right.
You're going to be called to account on that by the consumers.
Exactly. I mean, as a mom, you're like, how does this get to look like this? But, week after week, we're seeing more Fortune 500, and, similarly large companies, voluntarily commit to voluntarily reduce petroleum-based dyes, unnecessary ingredients and additives in the food supply. I was looking back over 2025 so far earlier this morning, and there have been various dairies take multiple commitments, reducing unnecessary dyes in dairy products in school cafeterias, a commitment there to phase those out.
Pink yogurt.
I know. Come on. I know. I won't name names, but and I would be it would be misleading to if I didn't acknowledge I maybe have consumed those in the past. I don't know how good, but it's just a different time. And as well as ice cream makers have volunteered to withdraw some of those dyes too. The secretaries Rollins and Kennedy had a couple weeks ago an ice cream. I saw it. Everyone did eat the ice
cream that's not
wasn't as colorful. Yes, but it was mint.
And I bet it doesn't taste good.
It was mint, and it tasted just as great and fresh. And so really kudos to the dairy industry for stepping up, and others.
That's awesome. Just to educate us on, from a policy level, like what is or what can the federal policy do to impact some congruency among the states? Or is that just the states have to do what the states are going to do? Or is there incentives for states to jump on some of these programs?
Right. AFPI, we view ourselves as the conveners. We were just talking about that before. It's what we do best. We have an amazing governor's council. We have the state departments of ag council. And so when states come to us, we share kind of what others are doing. I think that, a lot of these policymakers in the states are doing a good job collaborating, kind of talking with other states that are going on implementation. So you're kind of seeing similar waivers move forward, some a little different, but everyone's sort of holding hands and jumping at this point on that end as well. Then there are umbrella policies as well that, the federal government will take more of a lead on. For example, the dietary guidelines for Americans are changing. Well, they're due this year, and in a good way. I think Secretaries Rollins and Kennedy, they work on them jointly, have committed to trying to get those out well before the December deadline, making them more understandable, readable, less conflicts of interest present, maybe less sort of a boon to industry and more just like right by the science.
I was going to say, any science going to be involved with what really can be disease preventable and create health?
That's right. Well, they have empowered their scientists that it's kind of this advisory committee that comes up with them. And it's like the Super Bowl of all advisory committees. You have to make sure you get the right folks
without any
the right expertise. Yes, which is something the administration has cracked down on.
Yeah.
That wasn't always the case in the past. And kind of looking at data, in my opinion, they've always sort of fallen behind kind of where the marketplace and science are. It is every 5 years, so you're kind of catching up. At one point, it was big focus on carbohydrates, or what have you.
100%.
And with this latest round, there was, remember when kind of skim milk became all the
worst.
Right. I don't know how many years ago. The dietary guidelines still reflect no reduced fat or whole milk options.
Yeah.
And, we want our kids to get those healthy fats.
Yeah, they need to. It's so vital for brain development. That's
right.
What's crazy.
Right. That's the real science.
Yes, exactly.
And Secretary Rollins has said she wants to get that sort of reinstated. That is one priority. I think that's public. And just really based in current science.
Yeah, that's great.
Not lagging behind anymore.
Yeah, God, that's so great. I'm so excited. I could talk to you all day about this kind of stuff.
Isn't it fun?
It is fun. And it's just to educate. Like, I really want to educate, our listeners are regular consumers of everything, and we have doctors and nurses and nutritionists and nurse practitioners, and a lot of people just don't understand really what's happening up here in DC that's impacting. It's hard to decipher, when you're on social media, what's true, what's not true, what's really going on. So just with that, in that vein,
that's a good point.
Where can people that really want to know what is going on in this MAHA, and even we're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill in a minute, what is really happening, and not rely on opinions in social media that might not really be fact-based.
That's right. I would say this is one of the most accessible presidential cabinets online, most transparent, most visible. I go straight to the source. These days we're working on closing the gap on rural broadband, but most people have a phone. That's how they consume their information. They have X, they have social media, they have access to check out the website. So oftentimes I would go straight to the source. AFPI is available. You're obviously available if folks want to kind of myth fact or anything, but the double-edged sword, if you're not going straight to the source, there is a lot of misinformation, political narrative and spin on information.
Absolutely.
So just encourage folks to go straight.
And even just all the negative that came out around the changes in the SNAP program. Like, how can anyone think that it's bad to get poisonous chemical, quote, foods, it's not even food, away from children? Like, how can you even be on the other side of that?
That's right. And this is a bipartisan issue.
It's clearly bipartisan.
Secretary
There's no red, and blue. Yeah. Look at all this. There's every color back here.
That's right. It has been a bipartisan issue historically.
Yeah.
Wanting to, our nation's health should not be a partisan.
Yeah, and it's a disaster right now. Trust me, this is my passion, as you know. All right, so top 3 big deliverables that the Trump administration has done so far as it relates to MAHA, and then I want to move into the big, beautiful bill because there's a lot of confusion around that.
Oh, good. Excited for that. So I think the top 3, we kind of hit on a little bit of them, a few of them earlier. The 6 and growing SNAP waivers, restrictions on what can be sold in the states as far as taxpayer-funded SNAP sugary beverages.
Taxpayer-funded SNAP. Right? Because we're either going to pay for it on this side and we're paying for it on the disease side. We're paying for it on both sides. So if we eliminate some of that,
I think so.
That would be good.
Another quick action for 6 months where the influx of voluntary commitments by industry, stepping up, removing petroleum-based dyes and other unnecessary additives to the supply chain. Huge. Third, I would say there has been an effort to look into closing the GROS loophole. That is an acronym. It sounds super D-state. Generally referred to as SAFE, right? It's an FDA term, Food and Drug Administration.
There's a lot of overreach in that.
So I guess if you have a new certain additive in a certain category, ingredient that you'd like to add to food, if there is a preponderance of science that already deems it safe, you can kind of just do it and not even have to notify FDA. As someone who came from EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which registers all the chemicals, I'd actually argue their processes are way more rigorous than what I've looked into in the FDA GROS, which is what goes into your food is mind-boggling. So looking at closing that and requiring FDA to at least be notified or look into it, that's a great
So in other words, what you're saying is currently a lot of people could just add whatever to the food as long as they find a couple of studies that show that it's generally safe.
And who's doing the study?
But who's studying? And who's studying the long-term effects? I mean,
Well, who's doing it? So conflicts of interest was who's going to go out and research someone's in particular food product or the science behind it, that company. And so
interesting.
Trying to clear up some of the conflicts of interest there, I think is of interest.
That's good
as well. But back in the spring, Secretary Kennedy directed FDA to look into closing that loophole. Super exciting. They've also requested for more information on a common definition of ultra-processed foods.
Yeah.
Which is important. A lot of agricultural products are processed, but not in the way that Americans think of ultra-processed. And so really narrowing down the meaning of these terms, I think is huge.
So huge. And then that's something that we've talked about working on.
Yes, ma'am. So I think those are the top 3 greatest hits so far.
All right, let's move into the big, beautiful bill. And specifically, it's too much to talk about everything, but I think we can dial it into something that's near and dear to your heart and mine too. And that's our rural communities.
Yes, ma'am.
And anything else you want to talk about that, but let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. One big, beautiful bill hits the trifecta for American agriculture. I've been in D.C. a while, longer than I care to admit. I've seen farm bills. They've been amazing. This is probably the most historic piece of legislation I've seen so far in my professional career because it does 3 things. It provides a lot of permanent tax relief, tax certainty, tax cuts to farmers and ranchers. It addresses the death tax so that it can more easily pass along. The exemption threshold is much higher now, and you can more easily permanently pass along your farm and ranch operation to your children, next generation, without as much worry.
Incentivizing these farmers, these farming families to continue
it, which is a huge goal of this administration. Preserve the next generation of family farms. Additionally, in the tax bucket, 100% bonus expensing. There's something called Section 179 expensing, which is a little similar yet different. There is a provision that allows you to defer, not an accountant or a tax advisor, but defer payment on a sale, gains made on a specific sale from one farmer to the next.
Got it.
To continue to incentivize farming to stay in farming production. If you do want to keep your farm. Super exciting. Rural opportunity zones have been expanded. Secretary Rollins championed when she was at the Domestic Policy Council during the first Trump administration. Opportunity zones, tax credits that draw investment to underserved areas. I think in this bill, there's more of a focus on permanent rural opportunity zones, which is so exciting to draw more investment there. So gosh, I could go on.
We need a lot. We need broadband. We need healthcare access.
Everything. And this will help drive job creators, food manufacturers, folks to want to open their doors in rural America. So not just expensing and financial tools for farmers, but they really took a broader approach of, all right, well, how do we also draw investment to those farming communities as well? I think, 40% of our nation's population is rural, and really helping there. Additionally, I mentioned as a trifecta, the One Big Beautiful Bill provides updates to the farm safety net, which usually it's a really big deal for farmers and ranchers. It kind of sets the terms for a lot of their USDA products. Usually those updates only happen in a farm bill year. We have been operating under an expired farm bill. The last one, President Trump actually signed in 2018. It's 2 years overdue. And so to get some policy changes outside of a farm bill process is Herculean. So kudos to Speaker Johnson there and the relevant chairs. And then they'd also included some funds there, investments in animal disease preparedness. Food security is national security. And we're harnessing avian influenza, which has been a factor behind the higher egg prices that the administration, Secretary Rollins, is harnessing there through a couple policy tweaks. But more investments to prevent and manage that going forward, as well as there's other threats such as the New World screwworm. I don't know if anyone has heard about that. When you Google it, just like maybe on an empty stomach, it's so scary. scary thing, but fortunately not in the United States yet, but just preventative measures to short birth.
Right. And, that's what something I was talking to with Lori from the Produce Monitor earlier is just how hard the USDA works at our borders to ensure
that's right.
Imported produce is not bringing in some of these things.
100%. This would have been cattle, but we don't want any of it. Plants or
I'm talking about plants or animals too.
There's some key investments in market promotion, so exports abroad, which is huge. That's another way to revitalize rural America. Farmers grow crops, they produce livestock, they need markets for their goods to go. And so this promotes those opportunities externally, as well as a handful. There's some specialty crop key signatory programs that receive some investment as well in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So what you're hearing is the One Big Beautiful Bill is very big. And then finally, there are historic reforms, again, to taxpayer-funded SNAP, more so in the administrative lane, and as well as implementing more common sense work requirements to ensure those who can work do. Those have been waived.
So kind of decreasing a lot of the fraud involved in some of these government assistant programs, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Right. There was just no
cheating the system.
But it's also kind of
no
federal government too. Lackluster over the past 4 years, especially implementation of the program. In fact, there was sort of an incentive for it to get bigger than warranted. And I think it grew since 2021, 17% in size. All taxpayer funded.
Right.
And so just making sure that it is sized appropriately and those who can work should have to
so
be able to receive the benefit.
Incentivizing people to get out of the programs.
Ideally. I think so. More of a hand up versus a handout.
Yeah.
Promoting the dignity of work.
Yes.
Getting back to work looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
But more right-sizing the work requirements to reflect those who actually are
physically able
to participate in the workforce. So with the same exemptions, we talked about misinformation earlier. A lot of the same, all of the same exemptions. If you are caring for the disabled, pregnant,
those are all still there.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Obviously.
But it doesn't necessarily make the headlines, right?
Well, of course not, because they're just saying, oh, they're going to take it away and all that. No, that's not true. Everybody check, fact check. The other piece, and I'm going to wrap up with this, that is really near and dear to my heart is the incentives and also the funding available and the attention that it's bringing to the lack of healthcare resources, especially mental health care resources for our rural communities. And how can some of this allocation of these funds impact health and healthcare?
Oh, super exciting. Well, something we've been talking about, there is a new, on the healthcare side of the One Big Beautiful Bill, Rural Transformation Fund that has been created. It's $50 billion, so $10 billion over 5 years. States this fall will have a one-time chance to apply. About 50% of it, there's sort of a mechanism that guarantees a set amount of funding to states. So if states submit and follow the criteria in the law and what CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, set forth, they should, if they follow instructions and put together a thoughtful plan, they should get those funds approved. And so really looking at some of the rural healthcare challenges, there's been hospital closures, decreases in services. I've learned that maternal health is one of the first things to go in hospitals if you're looking at scaling back, which is so unfortunate. And so I think revitalizing rural America starts with ensuring they have access to the best. And we are the best country in the world. We provide the best services. Rural America should have access to the best healthcare. And so this will help facilitate that through those states.
Well, thank you so much. We could talk. We're going to talk again next time I'm up there.
Y'all should take us
going to be updates. We're going to have to just keep the conversation going. Is there anything else you just really want to make sure people know, understand about your world, what you're doing, that we just really need to get out there?
Yes, we're a voice for the people. Again, a lot of our mantra is farmers first, but we also delve into food policy. I'm a mom, right? Moms first, consumers, consumer awareness. So please utilize AFPI as a resource. We are ground up. We go straight to the experts on the ground. It's why we've been able to discuss so many issues. You're out there on the forefront. And so we reach out to the states to become educated. So certainly don't want folks to think, we're just sort of listening to corporate interests. No, we're getting our facts straight.
I'll tell you, if there's one thing, and it's why I'm even here, and that's why my husband and I are even so involved with America First policy, is because it is the first organization that we have ever been involved in that actually gets stuff done. Like, the work is getting done, and you can really see that reflected in what's going on in the current image.
So rewarding.
So refreshing.
And I've just had such a good time getting to know experts like you all to help keep us rounded and well-informed. So thank you for having me, y'all.